This is Dr. Gigi Sabat, and you're listening to the Walk With Me podcast. My guest today is MoJoe. Welcome to the show.
Hey, Dr. G, what's up?
Not much, and it's such an honor to have you here today. Can you tell us a little bit more about you and where are you from?
Well, originally from Montana. I was born and raised in Montana, and I live now in Southern California. I am the director of marketing for a small private university in Orange County, California. And I'm also a host on the Noom Vibe app. This is all about health and wellness, and mostly my shows are about mindset and positivity.
Excellent. Now, I've had the honor of hearing your events or meetings on Noom Vibe. Now, can you explain to the audience what is Noom Vibe and why do you host those meetings or events on Noom Vibe almost daily?
Sure. Yeah. So Noom Vibe is an offshoot of the Noom Wellness program, which is a digital program. It helps people with not just weight loss, but changing their lifestyle and their identity so that it will be sustainable. And I both had dabbled in Noom and on my own weight loss journey, as well as my wife had long before Noom Vibe was ever invented. And a couple of years ago, I was a host on an app called Wisdom, and it was pretty much a free form, free for all app where people could phone in and ask questions and share their thoughts and ideas. And so I had done nearly 200 talks as a host on the Wisdom app. And then earlier this year, Noom, the company Noom, parent company, absorbed Wisdom and repurposed it to be the social connection support team for the people on their weight loss journey, et cetera. And the programming director, who was a friend of mine from the Wisdom days, he called me up in late May of this year and said, "Hey, we'd love your voice. We'd love your the way you conduct your Wisdom talks was great. Could you be a regular here on Noom Vibe?" And I said, "Yeah, that sounds great. What do you want me to talk about? Because I'm not an expert in health, or I'm not an expert in weight loss." He said, "No, I just want you to do your typical stuff about positivity and mindset and how to understand yourself and make changes that are beyond just weight, but about identity." And I said, "Okay, I can do that." And I said, "When do you want me to start?" He said, "Tomorrow." So I started the MoJoe show on June 1st of 2024. And I've done a show nearly every day since. I think I've missed a couple of days. Either I was traveling or sick. And I've done a couple on weekends when I can. So I think we're at like 240 something episodes now within just launching in June.
I love it. And I've truly enjoyed listening into your meetings or events on Noom Vibe. Absolutely amazing.
Thank you. That's very kind of you. And I've enjoyed it every time you joined my talk because you always bring it whenever you show up.
Thank you, MoJoe. I appreciate that. Now, you have a quote, and the quote is, "The only way to have the life you love is to love the life you have." What does that truly mean, MoJoe?
Yeah, that's a deep one. And that one just came to me just in the last few months since I've been a host on the Noom Vibe app. And I can't remember exactly where the source was. And I think this is actually a variation on a quote that I heard. And it just dawned on me one morning that this is actually true. This is a truism that the only way you can have the life you love is to love the life you have. Now, a lot of people think that's kind of counterintuitive because they think the life that they will love is some other life other than the one they currently have. But the truth is, if you're always looking for something other than what you have, and then you'll be in love with your life, well, then you will never be in love with your life because there's always something else. There's always something out there. And so I love this shift, this mind shift. And I'm a big word fan. I'm a word nerd, you might say. I think words are incredibly powerful and important. And so this idea in my mind that if I can fall in love with the life that I have, well, life will inevitably change. Change is inevitable. But if I fall in love with love with the life that I have now, then whatever changes life brings, I will always be in love with my life, not with some life that I make up in my head.
I love it. Very powerful. Now, MoJoe, when you and I spoke, and you speak about this publicly as well in regards to the sexual assault, you've spoken about it on Noom Vibe publicly as well. Let's talk a little bit more about sexual assault. Can you tell us a little bit more about your journey?
Yeah, it's not an easy thing to talk about, but very important to talk about. In fact, for my own healing, it's been essential that I talk about it first with confidants, then with professionals. And now that I have brought my darkness into the light and received the healing that was long overdue, now I speak freely about it because one, it doesn't control me any longer. It doesn't identify, it doesn't define who I am any longer. And also because I really believe this is an opportunity for me to invite others into the healing process that I've gone through. So, long story short, when I was in 11, 12, 13, 14, my mother was in her second marriage. The man that she married was very narcissistic, not necessarily diagnosed as such, but had all of those traits. And his manipulation and overbearing personality, it kind of crushed my spirit. It not just kind of, it crushed my spirit. So, for example, somewhere in those years, and I don't remember exactly when, my tears just they broke. They just stopped working, and it wasn't like a conscious decision. I'm not going to cry anymore. But every time this domineering person would get into me, and I'm a very sensitive guy, I'd break down in tears. And so eventually, the tears just stopped. And so now I'm toughening up, you might say. And I kind of took that as a pride. Be tough. Don't ever let them see you sweat or cry or whatever. But what I didn't realize is that things were breaking on the inside. Then fast forward, after that marriage dissolved, now I'm really dying for a father figure in my life, someone that will nurture me. My father's kind of on the periphery. My stepfather was no one I would ever want to hang out with. And so in the church, I was befriended by the music pastor who was just full of life and joy. And we connected on music, we connected on spirituality. But what I didn't see coming, and there's no way I could have, is that he was grooming me for a series of molestation episodes. And I was 15 at the time, and I had no preparation that this was coming. I had no sense, no radar. Nobody had ever warned me or told me, if this type of thing happens, what you should do. And keep in mind, this is in the 1970s. Let's see, 15, I would have been maybe 1981. And so as this was happening, I was really confused. I didn't know if it was my fault or if it was okay. And I just didn't know what to do or what to say. So I didn't say anything. And my mom noticed after a few months that something wasn't right with me. She didn't know what it was. And she'd ask me from time to time, "Are you okay? You just seem like you're down a little bit." And then suddenly my grades started to falter. I wasn't as engaged in the sports and the music and the youth group stuff that I normally would do. So she says, "I don't know what it is, Joe, but something's bugging you, and you feel free to talk to me about it." And for whatever reason, at that moment, it just all came out, and I told her what was going on, and she immediately jumped into action, and we went and told the lead pastor at the church, and the guy was confronted, and I won't go into all the details, but eventually he was gone. But it left me, and what I didn't really see at the time, it left me with a lot of woundedness, because I was betrayed by someone not only that I trusted, but then you throw in the extra layer of a spiritual guide, a mentor that kind of has a whole nother layer to it. And I really didn't know what to do with it. I didn't know if I was the one to blame or if I should have done something differently. And I kind of carried a lot of this baggage that if I was smart enough, if I was strong enough, I was wise enough, I would have stopped it a long time ago. And I didn't. And I carried that as like guilt and shame. And I kind of shrugged it off, thinking, okay, that's over. It's gone. It's in the past. Let's just move on. And then as time went on, no big surprise, the wounds inside of me started to color my relationships with men, with authorities, with my bosses. And then eventually when I got married with my wife, and as my marriage started to crumble, I didn't know why. I didn't know what was going on here. I wasn't fully connecting the dots. And so to save my marriage, I went into therapy, and thank God that I did, because in that therapy, all of this stuff came back to the surface that had happened 35 years prior, and stuff that I thought was all gone and done and healed. But I never did the work. I never went into therapy as a kid. I wasn't invited to or suggested to. It just wasn't a thing in the culture at the time. So now the one really important factor was I was at this long weekend, a very immersive, all day long, all day night training, and in Arizona. And one of the things that they had us do was a role playing exercise, and the idea was we're going to reenact that worst case scenario when you were wounded, when you were betrayed, which I did not want to do. No, thank you. Can I pass on this? No, you can't pass. This is why you're here, Joe. So I'm like, oh God, this is going to be awful. And they said, but you're not going to play yourself in the scene. Someone else will play you. And you can either play an adult that was there that should have done something to help you but didn't, or you can play yourself But now as an adult, knowing what you know now, and you can come into the scene as if you were there back when it happened. And I had no idea what I was in for. So suddenly we start doing this role play, and I decided, okay, I'm not going to play an adult because there wasn't any adults in the room. I'm going to play myself, and I'm going to go rescue my 15-year-old self. So they set the whole thing up. I told them who was where and what, and man, the anxiety is going high, the adrenaline's pumping, right? And so then I get to walk into the room. This is all role play, right? But in my mind, now as a 50-year-old, I came in with all the wisdom and the anger and the fervor that I wish someone had been there for me when I was 15. And I kicked the guy's butt, and I called the police, and I put me in therapy, and I did all the things that would have been extremely helpful back when I was 15. And I got to tell you, Gigi, that I'm going to choke up right now, right? That particular exercise shifted something major, just a dramatic shift in my life that somehow even though it was in my imagination, I could do for me what hadn't been done all those years ago. And it was the beginning of the healing, the transformation inside of me. It was so empowering. It was absolutely life changing. And I've continued then with follow up therapy for several years, unpacking all of this and how it's played itself out in my adult relationships. And I got long ways to go, but I'm at the point now, like I'll speak about this to anybody, anywhere, at any time, because it's been such a transformation inside of me and has freed up all these things I didn't even know were hidden and locked down in me. And now as I talk about it, people are coming out of the woodworks going, me too, man. I haven't told anybody. And how did you get here? And what do you have? What recommendations do you have? And just the fact that I can speak directly to them with great compassion, with great empathy, knowing, how much that hurts and how damaging that is, and encourage them to follow along in my footsteps in their own way. I couldn't be more grateful and more interested and engaged in doing that.
Right. Now, it seems as though the exercise you just mentioned really touched you or hit a nerve. Why?
Yeah, I think it was because my imagination, my thoughts, my feelings were all fully engaged. It was as if it was happening all over again, which that was scary, right? But now, because I didn't play my 15-year-old self, I was playing me as an adult. Everything that I wished could have happened, for me. I came in as the hero, as the rescuer for my 15-year-old self. And although it was just role play, things are shifting in my mind and in my heart. And it's hard to put into words, but it was an absolute, um, it was like someone came into the prison, tore the bars apart, broke the chains, all that stuff, and pulled me out of the cave. I was way down deep in the cave, just hiding, hoping nobody would see me, my little 15-year-old self, and just reached out there and said, let's go, let's get out of here. This is not good. Let's get out of here and let's get you the help you need. And just pulled me out into the light and started that ability for me to talk about what had happened and to admit how it was damaging my adult relationships and how I needed to do something different now. And I was able to put feet and voice to that. So it was absolutely a turning point for my life.
Thank you for sharing that with us, MoJoe. And as a sexual assault survivor myself, my heart truly goes out to you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Let's talk a little bit more about forgiveness. Have you forgiven the individual who sexually assaulted you?
Yes, I absolutely have. And what I've learned through all these years is that one, forgiveness is essential. I knew that all along. I've been taught that since I was a kid. In fact, there's a overlaying verse in my life from the Bible that says, if you don't forgive, then you won't be forgiven. That's pretty serious, right? I don't want to be unforgiven, right? So I know that that's essential, but how? How do I do that when I feel like there was no fault of my own? I was the good kid. I was getting good grades. I was in the youth group. I was obeying my mom, right? I was the Bible kid. So I remember, this is really important, Gigi. I remember, because I was a prayer, I would go into my room before everything was exposed, and I would just be literally on my knees, crying into my bed and just crying out to God, saying, "Why? Why me? Of all people, I don't deserve this. What happened? Where are you?" Right? All the questions that we would ask when we're in pain, when we're suffering. And I can't tell you how many hours or how many days, but it was excruciating. And the only voice, the only response I ever heard or sensed was just these two words, I'm here. And I would say in response, God, I know you're here. I don't have any doubt. That's not what I'm asking. I'm asking why me, and why is this happening? Why didn't you protect me? Why do good things happen to bad people? All those big questions. And the answer just came back the same. I'm here. And eventually I kind of got the message. It was like, the only thing God's saying is that I'm here. And apparently that's all I need to know. And I didn't fully get that, but it did ease the tension, did ease the angst, and I just started to breathe easier and stop, beating my pillow to a pulp. But now, as I look back, I got to tell you how profound it is to know that what I was sensing back then as a 15-year-old is still true and has always been true, that I might not get the answers to my specific questions. Neither did Job, by the way, who suffered way more than I ever did. But what I did get is that the God of the universe, who's all powerful and everywhere all the time and knows everything, somehow was with me in my pain, and I think feeling my pain as well. And if he didn't stop it from happening, he didn't prevent it from happening, obviously, then now I understand there must have been a purpose for that, a purpose for my suffering. And in fact, now that I embrace that there is a purpose for my suffering, the suffering doesn't hurt as much because there's a purpose to it. It seemed so purposeless in the time. And now I understand that had that not happened, and I don't want to make light of any of this. This is not an easy answer to even digest. But I can say, as the person who had no fault, now I have to travel from being a victim, which I've been for many years of my life, to responsible. Responsible doesn't mean it was my fault. Responsible means that whatever happened, am I able to respond in a way that's healthy, that puts it in perspective, that bolsters my faith, doesn't corrode it. And so I'm absorbing and embracing this idea that I'm responsible not for what happened to me, but for what do I do next. And God is with me. And if God is with me, who can be against me?
I love it. God is with you. Amen. Very powerful. Now, let's talk about healing. Where are you now with your healing journey, MoJoe?
Yeah, I think the healing process probably won't be finished until I transition from this body, which has all sorts of problems and more as I get older, not just physically, but emotionally, spiritually, all these things because of the drama and the trauma and the pain and the shame and all that stuff. But I am unpacking a lot of this. And I learned a lot from Viktor Frankl. I haven't read the whole book, but he wrote Man's Search for Meaning. He was an Auschwitz survivor, and I actually got to tour Auschwitz as a musician back in the 1990s. So having stood in that concentration camp when it was vacant and thinking about what he went through as a prisoner, I really take his words to heart. And he says this profound thing. He says, between every stimulus and response is a little tiny space. And in that space is our ability to choose. And what we choose isn't just our actions, but it's the meaning that we assign to the circumstances. And here's the cool thing, Gigi, is that whatever meaning I assigned to my betrayal and my abuse back in the day, I can actually change that meaning now, right? The circumstances don't change. I can't deny that it happened, nor should I. That wouldn't be healthy. But what I can do now is I can go back in my mind's eye, just like I did in that role play, and I can say, okay, I didn't understand the purpose or the meaning for these circumstances, and I don't like them. I wish they never happened. I wouldn't want them to happen to people I hate, right? But I know that if I can assign a meaning to it, that now I am stronger, more resilient. I don't know if you've read the book Anti-Fragile by Nassim Taleb, but he says we as humans kind of have three outcomes when we are suffering. Either we get crushed because we're too fragile, or we survive because we're strong, or we become anti-fragile. He made up this term because he just saw all this evidence. Anti-fragile means we have the ability to be stronger after or even because of the suffering. And I'm like, wow, really? And so now this is the meaning I assign back to my abuse, which again, I'm not saying it was okay. It's not okay. It sucked. But what I'm saying is, even though it sucked, there is a purpose to it. And the purpose is to make me understand how resilient, how strong, how anti-fragile I am, that I'm actually stronger now, not in spite of my abuse, but because of it. And I got to tell you, I'm not at the place where I can go back and say thank you to my abuser, but I can say thank you to my creator for helping me through it, but also not just to survive, but to thrive. And now, of course, what we're doing here, I'm sharing my story. Hopefully, I can be a tool, a conduit of truth and healing for others who are stuck in that cell, stuck in the shadows, and afraid to come out.
Very powerful. Thank you, MoJoe. Now, MoJoe, what message do you have for an individual who may have gone through sexual assault as well, and they feel stuck or they feel alone?
Yeah. Well, first of all, that's not unusual. You should feel stuck and alone. So don't beat yourself up about that, because that's what I did. I thought, well, I was smarter. If I was bigger, if I was stronger, if I had more faith, if, I never would have let that happen. But it did happen. So now all that stuck to me like rocks in a big backpack, and it weighted me down. I put a good smile on. I was still a happy kid. Everybody liked me. But inside, my heart was broken, right? So first of all, that's not unusual. In fact, that is a natural human response when when you get trauma, when you get abused, when you get broken. So first of all, don't think that it should have been any different. That's the way any human would respond, and you're human. But however, that's not the end of the story. As I say now, I have lots of scars, but my scars don't define me any longer. They just show the roadmap of how far I've come. And Gigi, I don't know if you've heard of the Japanese art of kintsugi, but when I discovered this art, I embraced it as a metaphor for my life. In Japan, they have these artists who their whole life is dedicated to kintsugi. Kintsugi just means if there's a porcelain vase or a bowl that's priceless and it shatters, they don't sweep up the pieces and discard them. They bring all the pieces together and they painstakingly, over years, put the pieces back together, but they don't put it back together so that it looks like it never shattered. They actually seam it, they weld it with gold or silver or platinum so the seams are incredibly visible. And why is that? Because their philosophy is that the scars of a broken piece of pottery or porcelain are unique to that piece now, because no two pieces would ever break the same. So the pottery or the porcelain might have looked like the one right next to it until it shattered. Now, when they put it back together, the scars become a beautiful pattern, completely unique to that piece of art. And it shines. And I've seen, yeah, I'm gonna cry again. I've seen these pictures of kintsugi, and it's spectacular. It is beautiful, and it makes it priceless because it's a one of a kind. And so I really feel like God, my creator, my heavenly Father who loves me, is saying, Joel, you've got scars. We all do, but the scars aren't something to hide. There's something to show. Look how far I've come. Look what I've gone through. None of that killed me. I'm here to talk about it, right? So it hasn't destroyed me. It messed with me for a long time, and it did some damage in relationships that I have to repair. But however, I am kintsugi. And so I wasn't discarded when I was broken. The pieces are being put back together over years, over decades. But now the scars aren't something I have to be ashamed of or hide. I can actually wear them as a trophy, as a source of pride. Look how far I've come. It's the roadmap that shows how I got here. And it doesn't determine where I go next, right? It just says how I got here. And so kintsugi, man, that's me. It's all of us, I think, in some ways.
I love it. Now, tell us a little bit more. So, you've been through quite a lot in regards to the challenges that you face. Tell us a little bit more about what you're currently doing as a leader, MoJoe, and what does leadership mean to you?
Yeah, so I think the best example of leadership is someone who's willing to sacrifice their own status and power and expertise and resources for those that they lead. I don't think there's any higher or more noble form of leadership than servant leadership. And I've said those words a lot, and I still don't fully understand what they mean, because it's not easy and it's profound. But there are a few people in history that we can look to that really understood and embraced what servant leadership was and what their leadership did. So if we're talking about Martin Luther King Jr., great example. Mother Teresa, who I met in 1990 in Calcutta when I was touring as a musician, who made a vow of poverty so that she could walk through the trash of India to find these people who thought they were trash, who had no sense of self or worth, to show them that they are cared about, that they are loved, that they are worthy. And she sacrificed her health, her wealth, her any sort of status. As it turns out, she became one of the most influential people in history, but not because she lorded her anything over anybody, but because she became the servant of all, which is a very biblical principle, which I was taught as a little kid. And so now, as a leadership guru, I've studied organizational development in college. I've studied leadership my entire life. I realized that leadership has nothing to do with title or power or position. It does have something to do with influence, but the influence is most powerful when the leader humbles themselves, not just to the level of their subordinates, but below the level, and say, I will do the dirty work. I will make sure that you succeed. I am here so that you become a leader, not so that I can be successful, but so that you can be successful. And so that's what I'm embracing now, whether it's on Noon Vibe or it's in my job or even in my family as a father. How can I serve those? What can I bring to the table that will serve those around me, that will bring them up, help them succeed? And if I do that, then I feel that was a purpose. It was a purposeful, it was meaningful, which is far more fulfilling than any other type of leadership I've ever studied.
Amen. Servant leadership truly matters.
It
Love
matters. Yeah.
Yes.
And it's effective. There's even bottom line studies that say for those who embraced servant leadership, because a lot of people say, oh yeah, that's great in kumbaya land, Joe, but that's not really true in real life. But I'm telling you, whether it's a Fortune 500 or an Inc. magazine or credit union or bank, the institutions that I've studied that embraced servant leadership, the employees, they feel valued, and as a result, they are loyal and they will do anything to make that organization succeed, not because they believe in the organization, but because someone believed in them. And as a result, they'll make great sacrifices just like their leaders did. And it's extraordinary.
Wow. Very powerful. Thank you, MoJoe. Now, MoJoe, what is your best advice to the audience for walking with purpose and living a life of happiness?
Wow. Yeah, that's an easy one. Just throw out these nice little softball questions for me. Okay, so the Dalai Lama says very famously that the purpose of life is to find your purpose and to give your whole heart and soul to it. The purpose of life is to find your purpose and to give your whole heart and soul to it. And what I'm learning, Gigi, it's not just one thing. The old City Slickers movie, Curly with his finger was telling Billy Crystal, just that one thing, son, just figure that one thing. But I don't think it's one thing. I think as we evolve, we play different roles in our life, different stages. Purpose is, what's the big picture as to why am I here? And it's not just for my benefit, but it's so that I can provide something to someone or someone's to make their life better, and as a result, make the planet better. Because I really like the butterfly effect. The butterfly effect says that a butterfly with those little delicate wings flapping them in California sends out these waves, air waves with their wings, and energetically, the waves grow, they grow and they grow, and somewhere on the other side of the planet, there's a tornado or a hurricane or something spectacular happens just because the little butterfly just kept flapping its wings. And so, as powerful as I think I am, I'm really just a butterfly in the speck of the universe. But if I keep flapping and I do it with a purpose, which is to make someone's life better, to bring a smile to someone's face, if I'm going to be happy, it's not because I did all the things I wanted and needed. That never lasts. It lasts for a second or a day. It doesn't last for very long. But when I flip it and I embrace the fact, what can I do to make someone else happy? What can I do that will bring life and joy and purpose and meaning to someone else's life? Here's the deal. The more I give that away, the more I receive. And it's not like I have to wait for it. As I'm giving into someone's life, and whether it's helping a homeless person on the corner, I gave Christmas trees to this family that was outside of Home Depot, a lady with her two kids they weren't going to have Christmas otherwise. It cost me $40, and it's the best part of Christmas for me. You should see these two kids light up, a 4-year-old and a 10-year-old boy and a girl. They were like, we're going to have Christmas. It cost me $40 in about 5 minutes, and it was the most extraordinary experience, right? And that's what I'm saying, Gigi, is that when I take the focus out of what can I get to what can I give, not only does it make other people's lives better, it makes my life better, because now my life is purposeful, and when it's purposeful, I'm happy, right?
Amen. And agreed. Yes. Now, do you have any last words for the audience, MoJoe?
Boy, I got a lot of last words. I'm gonna give you this mantra that I picked up mostly from Robin Sharma, who I studied. and then I tacked on my own phrase at the end. This is one of my go-to mantras, and it really encapsulates a lot of what I believe about our journey in life. It's 4 simple phrases. Each has 2 words. It's dream big, start small, act now, and don't quit. Dream big, start small, act now, and don't quit. And when I get that right, Gigi, it's all flowing. It's flowing. I'm part of something big, and I don't have to get there all in one leap. And when I get discouraged, I just keep going. Or as Winston Churchill said, when you're going through hell, keep going.
Going.
Yeah, don't camp out there, right? Don't make that your home. And so these 4 phrases, simple but profoundly powerful. And so I try to follow in that mantra, and I'll tell that to anybody who asks, just like you did, because I think that's a great parameter to guide my steps.
Wow, very powerful. MoJoe, where can the audience find you?
Yeah, I think the best way is just to go to my link tree, which is mojo.studio. And there's an E on the Joe, so it's MOJOE.studio. There's a link tree there, which goes to my podcast, my YouTube channel. I've got a bunch of music online, my Noom Vibe talk that I do every day. And there's just a whole bunch of links of stuff that I've created and I've posted. And I'm constantly creating. I really do think, Gigi, that we all were created by a creator to create. And so when we're in creative mode, whatever that looks like, it might be creative problem solving, it might be an art or a music or whatever. But I think life isn't art more than it says science. It's both. But once I get the creative juices flowing, I'm tapping into something greater than I. And there's something fabulous about being a human that creates, because we are created by a creator to create.
That's right. And let those creative juices flow. Very powerful. Ladies and gentlemen, make sure to check out MoJoe on all of his social media platforms and also on Noom Vibe. And definitely listen in. And yes, if you'd like, take notes as well. I take notes. Very powerful. Love Noom Vibe. And again, I love the events or meetings that you host on Noom Vibe, and as well as other individuals who host on Noom Vibe as well. Very powerful. And MoJoe, again, thank you so much for being a guest on the Walk With Me podcast.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor.
God bless.
God bless you.